Hey folks, welcome back to the KLR 650 project. Getting this bike ready for a future adventure. We talked about how to evaluate whether or not your stator is working on this bike. What we're going to do next is to test and make sure that the regulator is working. Now there are different styles of regulators. It's nice that they've mounted this back up here where it's nice and cool and there's not a lot of heat. Heat kills electronics. This particular stator is one that runs 3 wires or a 3-phase coming in alternating current from the stator. You've got this black and yellow wire, which is the ground, and then this white wire is the positive or the voltage going back to the battery to recharge the battery. This middle one is a red and white wire, and it's a signal wire that picks up the voltage in the system, and when it gets low or there's more draw, it tells the regulator to release more power back into the system. So it's kind of a regulating wire. Now this is one of the early primitive style regulators. They're just fine. However, the newer styles are solid state regulators that are much more reliable. They actually don't have that signal wire. I'm not exactly sure how they sense it, but they've got solid state chips inside that actually will all you have is 5 wires. You have the 3 stator wires coming in, and you got a positive and a ground. You don't even have to worry about this signal wire, and it just keeps a constant voltage in your system. A lot of guys will upgrade their voltage regulators to that solid state one just simply because it's more reliable. This is fine though for now. It's not something that you see a lot of problems with, but to troubleshoot this, if you haven't seen the stator video yet, how to evaluate a stator, I'm going to put a link somewhere over here, and you want to go in and evaluate your stator first and make sure your stator is putting in voltage. If it is, then that part, it can be ruled out and you can move on to something else. So the idea of the regulator is to put a constant voltage back in the system and to charge the battery. It does that by taking alternating current and rectifies it or converts it to DC or direct current, which gets fed back into the battery. Now if a voltage regulator goes bad, so people will say, well, how do I know if my voltage regulator is bad? You know it's bad because it will go what we call open. In other words, it will stop controlling the voltage that goes to the battery, and any power that comes from your stator will just simply go right through the system and go right to your battery, and it will overcharge your battery. So what will happen is you'll find that you basically fry batteries all the time. Another symptom is headlight bulbs and bulbs that get burned out often, and that's because the voltage is too high. So what we want to do is we want to just simply evaluate if this regulator is putting out too much voltage. And people will say, well, how much is too much voltage? And in my experience, it's 14.3 volts. If this thing puts out more than 14.3 volts, it's bad and you need to replace it. It's not uncommon to see them go up to 16, 17, 18, 20 plus volts, and that will fry everything. So it takes a few minutes to check. So right now we have basically the regulator that gets wired right up to the battery. It's super simple. All you have to do is remove the seat from your bike. You have your voltage regulator here, which is an inexpensive item. I'll bring it up here so you can see it. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the dial to direct current. And we're going to go at 20 because we don't want it to be putting out more voltage than 20, we hope. So I've got it on direct current, and it's at 20 volts. And I'm going to set this here so you can see it. Hopefully. Oops, I'll turn it sideways. And on these first generation KLRs, you've got the positive on the inside of the bike, so I'm going to put that right there without the bike running so you can see what our base voltage is, and on the black lead on the negative. And you will see that right now this battery is holding 12.5 volts, 12.49, 12.5, whatever, volts without any load on it or without any charging. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start the bike, and you're going to see that number go up, even at idle. But we don't want that thing to go up above 14.3 volts, okay? So here we go. We're going to start the bike up. Okay, it's up to 12.7, which is just fine. Now, as you know, when you rev the motor up, it's going to spin the stator faster, and it's going to put more voltage into this regulator. So this regulator, if it's working properly, it will keep this voltage down. So let's measure, oh, it's up to 13 volts now, but that's totally fine. Okay, so I'm going to rev it up a little bit. That's 3,500 RPM, and it's still staying at 13.5 volts. If I let it off, 13.2 or so volts, so it's charging the system even at idle. But if you notice, it's never gone over 14.3, and that means that this regulator and the rectifier is working correctly. RPM is 13.7. Never even got above 14. Okay? So believe it or not, that's how easy it is. If you, and she's pretty warm, these heat sink fins right here, because the extra voltage that is going in there into the regulator has to be bled off somewhere, and it gets bled off as heat. But if you put the positive lead of your probe on the positive battery, the negative on the negative battery, and start it up and measure the voltage, it should never go above 14.3 volts. And if it's below the voltage in your battery, okay, so if you start out at 12.3 or whatever volts that was in your battery, and you start it up and it goes lower than that, then you've got a drain, an electrical drain somewhere, and there's something wrong you got to check out. But so this voltage regulator and rectifier is working just fine. The stator is working fine, so we know the charging system is working fine. So stay tuned for the next video, folks, and we'll talk about how to determine if your bike has a short. Okay? So any questions, leave them in the comments below, but take a few minutes to check and make sure your charging system is working good on your bike before you leave on a big adventure, okay?